Hello, ladies and gents. I wanted to make a quick video showing off how to configure our buttons using the IQ Master. They are specifically made for our buttons to configure. That being said, any iqLink Master will work. But if you are not using iqLink, this might be a helpful little master that will just allow you to make any changes you want and put your buttons out into production. So first thing I'm going to do is connect to the master in the top left corner and plug my button in. And I should see the button come up. So for this tutorial, I am using the Series 41 solid display. You can use any button that you might have on hand. But there will be some differences. So for example, the Series 40 displays, they have displays, and the Neo 10s do not. And if you want to test if your button is really connected or not, you can look at this process data. So when I press the button, you can see that I am actuating it. And then we can get into the scenes. To understand how these buttons work, I think it's important to lay out the scenes. And each scene is labeled with when they will be active. So for example, LED scene 0 is no touch, E1 off, and E2 off. Scene 1 being when it is touched. And then the rest of the scenes are when they're being touched or not touched with the different output pins. And that goes all the way to scene 7. And to configure the scenes, you can choose your colors. We also offer 2 customizable colors where you can just input the RGB values. For this tutorial, I'm going to run with orange. And you're given several options for the LED effect that you can look through and play around with. So for example, circle fill clockwise. The effect frequency is how fast it's going to do that effect. I usually leave it as default because it will go extremely fast. If you're using a Series 4X display, this is where you would put your text that you would like to add. Keep in mind that this is a 7-segment display with 4 characters. So for example, I can't do Z mainly because of that line that crosses to the top, from the top to the bottom. But I can do letters like O. I can do H. And we have a manual that shows you each button that you can do. So for this tutorial, I'm going to use just Go. And then you could just repeat this through all your scenes that you are going to use. Of course, if you're not using your output pins, then you don't need to configure them. If you're just using no touch and touch. And then we can get into the timer functions. I wanted to go over the scenes first just so you understand that how these buttons operate and how they display. The timer function is, I like to think of them as like an intermittent scene. So when I'm entering a scene, I can add a timer and I can do all my effects as I did before with the different colors. And you can also set how long you want that timer to last. And you also cannot display text. It will just display the timer on the button if you're using a display, of course. Moving on, we have our custom colors, RGB, from 0 to 255. You can pretty much create any color that you'd like on these buttons, and it will show up pretty clear. Most people stick to the classics like red and green, of course, maybe blue, but it's always an option if you're looking, I don't know, maybe you want to replicate your company's colors. It could be kind of cool. The next most important thing, and probably the most important thing of this tutorial, is your LED control mode. This is dependent on how you are using the buttons. So automatic scene selection is the button will switch scenes based on if E1 and E2 are on and off, and if you are touching it. So how you configure it down here, this is what will show up when you meet these certain conditions, right? The next one is iqLink, scene controlled by iqLink process data. So what this allows you to do is to address the iqLink process data and change the scenes through your PLC. So if I wanted to, I could have a tag, for example, that tracked if the button was actuated. And when it is actuated, I can change to the scenes. I highly recommend checking out our TRM. This will explain the addressing and the bytes that you are given to play around with. And it allows for control from the PLC of when you want to display certain scenes, and also displaying iqLink process data. So from automatic scene selection, you're not going to be able to display live data, but scene controlled by iqLink process data, you will. And advanced is pretty much the same, except for there are no scenes in advanced. It is up to you to program each and every LED and what is displayed and how you want the button to work. It is, of course, advanced. I highly recommend sticking with scene controlled by iqLink process data, because I can still have the UI where I can control my scenes and also display iqLink process data, or just process data from your PLC. And then you have some other settings like the adaptive LED brightness, manual LED brightness, boot sequence, just change the color of it. And you can also rotate the button. So for example, I mounted a button upside down yesterday, and I just rotated 180 degrees and was able to not have to take it out of the panel I was putting it on. And just for reference, the button over here, this right button, is how you send your configuration to the button. And if I do multiple, for example, if I change multiple, I can use write all, or I can just erase all. All our buttons are M12 5-pin, but with iqLink, you're allowed to change the pinout. This allows for just restricting how the button is used. That might make it easier to program on the PLC side. It's pretty helpful. Most of the times I leave it in 5-pin mode, just to keep things easy. The sensor mode, that is how the scenes are displayed. So we have toggle, dynamic, and static. Toggle being, once I touch that button, it will keep that scene until I touch it again. Dynamic, even if I'm holding on to the button and pressing it, it will still switch back to the original scene. And static is when, as long as I hold the button, I will stay at that scene. And you have some different other settings that you can play around with, like minimum actuation time, and activation, output activation delayed. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, this is the minimum that you need to know to get your buttons up and running. And that's the video. Thank you for watching. If you need to contact me about any technical questions, you can contact me at techsupport.americas@captron.com. Or if you're interested in the buttons, you can contact us at sales.americas@captron.com. You can also buy this IQ Master from us. This IQ Master is specifically made for these buttons and allows people to make their configurations with pretty UI. Thank you.